If you're paying cash, you probably want to look into buying used because of the massive depreciation.
I think new car buyers are always new car buyers, and I think used car buyers are used car.
But that could come with some hassle with that.
Like I said, there's still a lot of competition for the used cars because there's not a ton of inventory. There's more demand than there is supply.
And so it really depends, because when I talk about like trying to get or how to buy a Tesla for $10,000, I think like, oh, well, just lease it, because now that Tesla is really doubling down on low lease payments. Like
People's refunds are not as big this year and even last year as they've typically been. So I think there's less money out there to spend.
have you seen a floor in which the minimum pricing won't go lower than that?
Cars need to be driven regularly. And with a low mileage car, you don't know how it was driven.
Welcome to episode 2 of The Breakdown, where we talk about buying a Tesla or buying electric vehicles, how to buy them, and also on the service and repair side as well. My name is Dennis CW, and you guys know Chip as well. And of course, again, thank you to Amber for partnering with us on this podcast. So in today's topic, we're going to talk about how to buy a Tesla for $10,000. On the new side and the used side, there's just so many different options out there. And I've got a fun one, I think, on how to actually get a Tesla for $10,000 or an electric vehicle for $10,000, because there's a lot of different options out there. But I want to hear from Chip first on what's the current market like, and can you actually buy an electric vehicle or a Tesla for $10,000? And what's the condition of that type of vehicle?
Great question. The answer is yes. You can buy an electric car for less than $10,000. And right now on Auto Trader, there are 4 Teslas listed for under $10,000. Now, the condition of those cars are former salvage vehicles, and they are rough. Anywhere in mileage from 70,000 all the way up to 220,000 miles. But they are pretty beat up if you look. Sort by lowest price first, and they're out there. But I don't think that's a car that most of our listeners are going to be looking for. That's more of like a project car that you're looking to put some money into. I really think the starting point for a good Tesla that you're going to use every day is in that $16,000 to $20,000 range. Whether you go with the standard range or a long range, the 2018 models have come down. Even on my lot, I have them for as low as $17,900 with the tax credit. And we're going to naturally see that come down a little bit more over the next months or so, over the next year. So anything below that, I would really question about, the history of the car. Does it have a clean title? Has it been wrecked so bad where you maybe not want to drive it or put your family in it? So there's a lot of factors, but it's definitely possible. And there's some other great options out there, like the Chevy Bolt is really getting down to that $10,000 price point. You'll still be under factory warranty, 250 miles of range. So definitely possible for sure.
So would you actually, have you dabbled in like one of those salvage Tesla vehicles, or would you, because I get that question a lot. Like people are like, hey, well, what if I bought a salvage one that's $10,000 less? And I usually steer them away. But I mean, I actually went to go check out a Model 3 Performance, a 2024 Tesla Model 3 Performance that was salvage. And of course it had all the different things that you'll find on salvage, like the bumpers didn't line up correctly. They definitely went with the cheap route, I would say, to fix it, because they just use refurbished parts to put these things together, right? But would you ever consider a salvage one, or have you ever sold one?
No, I've not gotten into it. Every time I've bought clean title ones that are kind of rough that, try to restore it. And you always end up spending more on it than if you would have just bought it fixed or not wrecked to begin with. I know a lot of people say my labor's free. Well, my labor's not free. I have employees I got to pay. But if you're doing it yourself, you're going to buy the parts yourself, you're going to fix it, you're going to paint it, and you have the skill set to do the mechanical, the body, and the electrical repairs, you should probably own a shop and not be doing this to like build yourself a car, honestly, if you have that skill set. But I don't think it's worth it. But I'm not going to tell people how to spend their money. I just don't see it. You could buy a good one for less.
Yeah. But that brings up a good point, because like in the used car Tesla space, what's like the most common thing that goes wrong? Like I'm so focused on new that, I'm always like, hey, you got a warranty, you're good. Like, don't worry about it. But like when you say buy a Tesla for 15 to 20K, what are some things that people need to like look out for?
I mean, outside of cosmetics, it's going to be suspension and then error messages. A lot of things can be masked on the car, like to sell it quickly through like a Copart or, even a less than prominent dealer. But a lot of suspension, coolant leaks, and then just electrical issues. I've even bought some cars that on the surface seemed good, and then I found out like it had a bad car computer in it, and that's like $2,500 to be fixed. Not a huge deal. It's not covered under warranty. The car only had 70,000 miles on it, so it's still under the powertrain, but the factory computer was not, it was out of the 450. So that's something that I've seen. I've had to replace a couple car computers. We replace monitors a lot because they get the sun, kind of get burned out by the sun. But it's mostly cosmetic um, that we see. But I still feel like anybody who buys kind of one of these rougher cars, these are not really in like roadworthy condition. These under $10,000 used Teslas, like you're gonna have to like secure the bumpers back to the car. You're gonna have to put a good set of tires on it. I mean, I'm looking at these pictures and these things are sitting on flat tires. The jump ports are hanging out of the front tow hook cover. I mean, they're pretty rough. Yeah, I don't think they're roadworthy even at $10,000.
Yeah, that makes
Let
sense.
alone
So,
getting it through a state inspection if you have one.
oh, that's true. Yeah, because a lot of these different states, when you're buying a used car, and if you're not buying from a reputable dealer like a private seller, like it's on you to get it inspected
That's right.
and passing through all the safety inspections and everything. But getting to like the sweet spot, like I think you just mentioned like $15,000 to $20,000. That's like Model 3 specifically,
Model 3.
right?
Yep. We've had some
Um,
Model Ys touched into that category. Couple of them.
yeah,
We
I mean,
just sold one this weekend.
I've seen that. Yeah, Model Ys are getting, I mean, I like to call it that $25,000 tax credit threshold. And like
Mm-hmm.
Model Ys there's a good amount that have just crossed that. And I imagine by middle of this year that it's going to be basically the same as the Model 3 market. There's going to be the 15 to 25K of vehicles in that sweet spot for Model 3 and Model Y. But like
Mm-hmm.
other models like S and X, like that probably ranges so far because I've also seen Model S is like $12,000 as well. But
Yeah.
would you touch those with a 10-foot pole?
No, no. And, we were talking about stabilization in the Model 3 and Model Y market. The Model S market and Model X continues to fall right now. We're seeing huge depreciation in those cars even recently. I think the Model X and Model S are just too complicated of a car to rebuild and have it running good. I mean, even ones that haven't been wrecked struggle to go down the road smooth and straight for an older one. So I can't imagine one that's been hit and putting a ton of money into it. I think those are more parts cars at this point. If you're going to do it with a 3 or a Y. Definitely don't do it with an X or an S.
Yeah, and I feel like people get so tempted with like, oh, like I get to drive a Model S for the price of a Model 3, but they don't realize like all the different issues that could come down the line.
Just look at the guy driving the 15-year-old S class or 15-year-old 7 series. You look like him. Like you're that guy. You're just barely keeping that car together to keep it on the road.
Yeah, that's crazy. In terms of like market for these Tesla vehicles, like, do you think there will be a floor, or is there a floor? Like, let's just go back to Model 3 and Model Y because I feel like that's most of the people buying and most of the
Mhm.
people watching as well. Is there a floor for both of those vehicles, or have you seen a floor in which the minimum pricing won't go lower than that
I
for a
think
clean option?
yeah, yeah, I think there is a floor just like for a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord, like they just won't go below 10 grand. You know what I
Okay.
mean? You cannot find a low mileage Accord or Camry for low 10 grand. I feel like the Model 3 is going to follow that same thing because at 10 grand, the car pays for itself in like 24 months if you drive 50 miles a day. So you could buy it and drive it for free. Just like an older Honda or Toyota, essentially, you spend that money, you're not going to lose anything. I think 10 grand is the floor for a clean title, running, driving one with no issues, even with 150,000 miles on it, because there's still life left in that car. And you could spend a grand or two, if you had to put tires on it, replace some control arms, bring the service up to date, and still have a decent car.
Yeah, and that's I mean, going back to like new versus used, like on a new car, you have very minimal maintenance in that first 4 years. But on a used car, when you buy like let's call it a 15 grand Model 3 or Model Y, what would you say is like the expected maintenance? Like, let's just do round numbers of costs for owning it for 4 years. So try and compare it against a new.
If we take into consider tires, I would say 2 to 3 grand. If you take tires out, I would say it's less than $1,500.
Yeah. And so it really depends because when I talk about like trying to get or how to buy a Tesla for $10,000, I think like, oh, well, just lease it because now that Tesla is really doubling down on low lease payments. Like we saw as
Mhm.
low as like 199, 249. Now they're running like a Model 3 lease for 299 with 1,000 downs for 24 months. And so if you think about it, that's way under 10 grand with taxes
Mhm.
and fees, and you're probably literally not going to pay any sort of maintenance on that. And so it is interesting to see these different prices on like the new versus used side for that. And so what do you think about like someone brand new into this, should they, I guess it depends on their financial situation. I tell people, like, if you're paying cash, you probably want to look into buying used because of the massive depreciation. But that could come with some hassle with that. Would you say, like, on the maintenance side?
I think new car buyers are always new car buyers, and I think used car buyers are used car. It's hard to convert one or the other over, um, just because it's a mindset. But I think what Tesla's trying to do is make it where that used car buyer, it's a no-brainer to buy new. But eventually, they're gonna have to sell those cars to somebody off of lease. So, it's kind of up in the air on that one.
What would
I
you
don't
say?
know. Okay, so me personally, I lease. Like,
Okay,
personally, I lease, but yet
right,
I own a used car dealership. But it's because of my financial situation. Like, I need a new car for my wife to drive. I don't want any problems.
right,
If something goes wrong, she can take it to the dealership and it's handled. I don't have time to work on my own cars while servicing all of my clients' cars. So
right.
it's different for me. I just need to set it and forget it. I need a new car because I don't want to deal with anything. Yes, we had used cars. She used to drive a demo, and when something would come up, I'd have to take all the car seats out of it, put it into another car. So it's a whole different situation for me. But if you are not in my situation, buying used is the way to save money. It is, in my opinion, the cheaper way to get into one of these cars and have long-term savings.
Yeah. And would you say, like, all these different incentives that are happening on the new side, is that impacting, and that's why we're starting to see more Model Ys and Model 3s under 25 grand because of just how much Tesla is incentivizing them?
Yeah, I think so. I think the price suppression's coming. There's still, like I said, there's still a lot of competition for the used cars because there's not a ton of inventory. There's not more than we need. There's more demand than there is supply on the used side. So I think that will continue to be a factor. It just depends. Like, if the used cars dry up, people are going to go towards new, but then the manufacturer is going to raise the price. So
Right.
they know, they're smart. Um,
It's just like this endless cycle and everything. And we both love Teslas. We both drive Teslas. You have a Rivian as well.
hmm Yep.
But we do have to always remind people to, like, see what else is out there, like opportunity costs. What are some other electric vehicles that you feel like maybe not comparable in terms of like technology to Tesla, but like that are in that $10,000 to $15,000 price range, but are used electric vehicles that could be a good alternative option if that Tesla is just too out of their reach?
Yeah, I'm gonna say under 20.
Okay.
I think I got two good options there. The Nissan Aria is starting to get down to the under 25 range. I have one on my lot for sale for 21 grand right now. So comparable to the Model Y. I think the Nissan Aria is a great car. I don't know if you've had a chance to drive one, but I think they are cool inside. It's a wonderful driving car. Wish it had a little bit more range, but again, 230 miles is more than most people need. It's good. And the other one that I really, really like is the Kia Niro. It's kind of an unsung hero. It's one of the few cars that they rated at like 240 miles of range, but you really get closer to like 300. So unlike all the other manufacturers who have this pie in the sky number of range, Kia actually underrated their cars, and most of my clients get farther than that. And it's a great selling point. And if you go on the forums and Reddit and you read about it, you'll see that it's pretty consistent. So Kia Niro's right now after tax credit 17.5, and like I said, Nissan Aria after tax credit right around 21 grand. Below that price point, the Chevy Bolt and the Nissan Leaf are the two that I go to for low mileage, good cars with decent range.
That's crazy because I want to say like the Nissan Aria like just came out pretty recently. It was like a 40, 50 grand car and like you
The one I
already,
had, yeah, I have
yeah,
a 2023 for sale, 22,000 miles. MSRP was $45,000. We're selling it for 24.9 minus the 4,000 bucks. So you're getting it for a little under 21 grand. And I think it's a cool car, man. It's a nice, nice car inside. It's got a big screen across, Alcantara seats or suede or whatever they want to call it. But my kids thought it was cool. I dig it. I've been driving it the past couple days.
that's that's awesome. And what about like maintenance and like repair or issues that come up with like other brands versus Tesla? Like if you were to rate all of them on a scale, like I don't know, 1 to 10, 10 being the worst in terms of just random stuff that comes up that you need to fix, like where would you place all these different brands on?
That's a good question. Problematic, probably Nissans are the most problematic, to be honest with you. Uh, if there's a car that I sell that has an issue after the fact, like months down the road, it's usually a Nissan Leaf. And newer ones too. I'm buying, 21s, 22s. The Chevrolet products rarely have issues after I sell them, and then Tesla's more just drivability, people getting used to the way Teslas drive. Most of the problems with Tesla are just problems with all of them, squeaks, rattles, what's that noise, just getting used to hearing, the AC compressor running that's not being drowned out by an idling engine. So a lot of it's not real issues. People just think they are,
Right.
just
Yeah.
not familiar with it.
Exactly. Yeah. When you drive an electric vehicle, it's just so much more quieter. You just hear everything. Have you driven the new Model Y yet?
No, I haven't. They had them down at the Tesla dealership, but they had a protest this Saturday, so I
Uh,
didn't wanna go down there and be a part of that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the new Model Y is fantastic. We just got one, and
You own one? You
I,
actually bought one?
yep, the Juniper launch
Okay.
series and all that. Even though I talked crap about it in the last podcast, last show, but I would say it's 40% more comfortable in terms of suspension, but 70%, maybe even 80% better build, like less rattles, no, like next to zero rattles or squeaks or anything like that. They did a fantastic job. I'd say people, it's almost Model X level, depending on which type of driving you're
So
in.
is it just, like, thicker plastics and they're getting the clip design down and how to actually put something together like some of the legacy manufacturers?
Yeah, like in the trunk area, instead of like the plastics, like the hard plastics, it's like a felt. It's like very interesting. So they've like swapped all these different things for
Oh.
the noise vibration reduction and
Oh,
everything. So
that's
it's,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to get in one. They're gonna be due for a price drop here in, like, 6 months, so I'm gonna steer
exactly.
clear until that happens.
Maybe even like a month once they remove the launch series and it goes back to like 45K, and then give it another year, it'll be down to like 20K.
Yeah, I've been watching the, leftover stock levels of the old body style, and, once those all get sold, then I'm sure the price reduction will be around it. There's still some out there, not many, though. A lot of
Yep.
people are gobbling those up right now.
Yeah, it seems like they've realized that if you put $8,000 to $10,000 off a legacy one, but still it's only at 5.84%. So I guess people, I think there's just people that are like we talked about last podcast, like the new buyers coming to the space. I feel like are more either credit worthy or cash buyers, and so they don't care about 5.84, or like you said, like people are just numb to 5 to 6%, and they just that's what it is, and they're just gonna go ahead and buy.
I think you're seeing that in the mortgage business too. People are just accepting these higher rates, maybe. I don't know. I'm not the rates are way too high.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I wanted to ask though, like people that are buying used Teslas, like the 10 to 20K or that 20 to 30K, is there like a threshold? Like, I tell people like right now on the new Tesla, like a Model 3, you to get 0%, it's very strict actually. Like people think
Mhm.
they can just get 0% on the Model 3 and be go with it. No, it's not like you have to have 20% down. You have to have a good credit score. And within a good credit score, this, like it's not just credit card, good credit score. You have to have credit card and auto loan history credit score. Is that the same, would you say, on the used side, or like there's different spots for
The
vehicles?
guy who qualifies for 0% doesn't need it. It's like, here's a loan for somebody who's not gonna take the loan. You're just that guy's paying cash. He's just gonna leave that money in the market and take the 0%. He was gonna buy anyway. I don't know if the 0% really pulls that many more people in. I don't know. Maybe. It just
Yeah.
seems like, the guy who qualifies for it doesn't need it. That's always my mindset on it. When you box that in, it's like you gotta be a 750 credit score with 2 paid Teslas and, $10,000 down, and it's like, okay. I don't know. What do you think?
Y- Yeah, no, I mean that's a good way to think about it. You're right, because like most people that can pay cash, like they'll just take the 0% because it's like a gimme rate, or like the 1.99, 2.99. But the people that actually want the 0%, they would need to finance the vehicle 60 to 72 months, and then Tesla just bumps them up to like 3, 4. But I was really curious, like on the used side, like because I've always been of the mindset that used cars are harder to finance. You need more down, but I guess the people that are in like the questionable mid rate, like I don't know, 700 with only a couple $1,000s down, can they still get like the 6 to 7% on a vehicle, or are they getting bumped to the 8 or 9%? But also, why would you want to pay for expensive repair costs? That's where our podcast partner Amber comes into play here. Instead of paying thousands for a warranty for your Tesla vehicle, you can pay month to month, and it could cover expensive repair costs like a DC converter on a Tesla vehicle that someone saved $1,800 by using Amber to cover it. So definitely check out Amber down below, get a month to month quote for your Tesla vehicle. And there's 3 different packages out there. There's basics, essentials, and premiums. So instead of paying thousands for a warranty, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 on a warranty, pay month to month with Amber. Use the link down below and use our promo code Dennis to save some money on it as well. Thank you to Amber for partnering with this podcast, and let's get back to it.
Yeah, unless you're an 800 credit score, you're not really getting below 10%.
Yeah.
At least with the banks that we work with. So it, like you talked about in the beginning of this, does the interest rate versus the sale price equal out to be the same? And if you're paying the same for a new versus used, you would naturally go towards the new car.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case.
Exactly. And then with the current market right now, because it is tax season, right? And so people are getting the refund checks. Are you seeing more increase in activity and everything where people are trying to buy that cheaper electric vehicle?
Tax time over the past couple of years has not really been anything. I've never really been in a tax time dealership. That tends to be really lower end cars, but I'm not seeing it. Our business is very consistent. We don't really have spikes or drop offs. No. The only thing that I see is paying more for the cars at auction. So prices go up during tax time, but demand doesn't necessarily go up, at least at my lot.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So it's pretty much consistent. And maybe that could be the market you're in as well. And like, it's just, or also maybe that could speak to like the electric vehicle buyer. Maybe they are more apt to like figure out the different numbers and they don't get a refund because they've figured out their different levels of deductions and everything.
Yeah, maybe. I see more business driving in because the tax credit may go away. I
Mm,
see more people talking about that than actual like getting a tax return. I think refunds as a whole are down across the nation because of all the forwarding credits that people took throughout the year, like earned childcare credits and stuff like that. So people's refunds are not as big this year and even last year as they've typically been. So I think there's less money out there to spend.
yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we should talk about in our one of our future episodes on like the 7,500 tax credit. Like, is it going away? And if it does, what's like the potential market effects? Like, I personally think if it goes away, like Tesla specifically, they'll just drop prices 7,500 because they need to. But
Yep.
some of these other manufacturers, I don't think they can.
No, not really. Well, they can. It's whether they can survive doing it.
Right.
Do they want to blow it out? I think there's a lot of margin in those EVs that the manufacturers are not letting us know. They're not expensive to make. They're significantly cheaper to make than gas cars. So while they hem and haw of, oh, we're not making any money, I don't believe that. I think they're making a fortune on these cars and they're just trying to hold on to that cash cow as much as they can. They can be fancy with their accounting. But there's less content. Just from a manufacturing standpoint, there is significantly less parts in an electric car. And there's no way that the car cannot cost less to make. I don't believe that it costs more to make an EV than it does a gas car. With the emissions equipment and all the other stuff that goes into it, there's just no way. So I don't believe them.
Right.
I just
No.
don't believe what they're telling us. I think there's tons of margin left, and I think that if the tax credit does go away, they're gonna magically find a way to make that margin up and make them cheaper. And, "Oh, yeah, we coulda sold it for that price the whole time." It's
Right.
just greed. I think corporate greed is at an all-time high, and
Mm,
some of that stuff just doesn't make sense from an engineering standpoint, from a mechanic standpoint. There's just less there. You can't tell me, like, a seat in an EV costs 3 times as much as a seat in a gas car. It doesn't.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
You're telling me that that battery costs significantly more than the entire emission system and all the R&D that goes into it? There's just no way. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. That makes
So,
sense. But the other flip side to the tax credit situation is the $4,000 used EV tax credit.
yeah.
What would you say is like the take rate of all your people that you're selling to? Is it like 50% people actually utilize that?
90%. Oh,
90%.
90%. It's huge. And even the people who don't qualify, we're finding co-signers and getting grandparents involved and, college kids who are not dependents. I mean, we've gotten creative without it. And all within the guidelines. I mean, this is all legal. We've
Right.
just gotten creative with how we've done it. Everybody's taken advantage of it. I've probably sold 10% of the cars that qualify without it. And I'm in a pretty wealthy area again. But that that kind of wealth is buying new where
Right.
I'm at. They're big earners. So the used car's not even on there unless it's for their kid or something like that. And even that situation, they're usually buying new. But the people that we are getting, it's definitely a huge take rate. They're coming to me for it.
Yeah. And well, I've always been a belief like that, just like on the new side, the 7,500 is inflating prices. Is the $4,000 one inflating prices on the used side, would you say? Like, even if
Yeah,
that went
the
away,
minute it
would we
came,
see
yeah. Oh yeah, the
$5,000
minute it came,
Teslas?
no, I don't think it's inflated that much. So here, when it came out 2 years ago, when we started being able to take the credit right off at the time of sale, prices creeped up about $2,500. So the consumer is not getting $4,000 worth of value; they're getting about $1,500. You're buying a qualified car for about $1,500 less than if the market was just naturally out there. So there's a little bit of savings for the clients, but it's not as much as they think because as the wholesale prices have gone up. Yeah, all of us dealers are, well, I don't need to make 4 grand. I could live off of two. So you start overpaying for the car because there's still margin left there.
Right.
And we've done a good job of pushing prices up. Like I told you, that Model 3 in our other episode, Model 3 prices have really stabilized over the past 12 months, specifically the 6 months. There's been almost no movement down in price. So I think we're seeing it being propped up by the tax credit. And once the tax credit goes away, it's going to go down, but it's not going to go down by 4 grand. I think we're going to see it go down by 2,000. So a
Okay.
car that's 20 grand you're going to buy for 18, you're not going to be able to buy it for 16 or not.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. My next question is, would you buy a Hertz used Tesla? Because, we see them 16, 20, 22K. And then
Okay.
after the tax credit, then some of them get down to like 14, 15K. And, I went to go check one out and I thought it was in okay condition. Of course, like you can't expect like a rental vehicle to be in tip top condition. But the one thing I wasn't able to see like is how does, the longevity of the battery and the drivetrain. And you've been around these used
hmm
vehicles and you drive them and everything. And even those like the high mileage ones you talked about in the last video, like would you buy like a Hertz Tesla?
Okay. So when Hertz first started dumping them last year, I went out and bought 10 of them because I could buy a 22 long range for in the teens. But I'd have to put $5,000 or $6,000 into it to make it a retailable unit. Wheels, tires, windshield, trim, seats, steering wheels. Almost every single one of them needed all of that. They're just worn out, beat up, and time we got it looking like a right car, you know, it's just lipstick on a pig at the end of the day. So after I sold about 10 of them, now people were flying in to get them. Don't get me wrong, they were buying a 22 for 21 grand. And they overlooked some of the scratches and all of that was left because I put a lot of recon into because I wanted to sell a good product. But at the end of the day, it was not worth the effort. There would not be enough left over for a quality car. And I'm all about putting out a quality product. I could have just
Right.
detailed them and sold them cheap and made a little bit, but that's not what I really want out there. I'm not that kind of shop.
Yeah.
Um,
And you don't want issues later down the line too.
No, but
Cause
here's my thing. The battery scores came back really, really low. We have some equipment that we can plug into to them. We have a company called Verse New that actually we plug into the CAN bus of the car. We pull some data out of it. We send it to them, and they actually send us back a real battery report. And the scores were coming back really, really low, and we attributed that to the excessive supercharging. We're talking a
mm,
2022 being sold a year and a half, old with 60,000 miles and mostly supercharged. And, we're talking significant degradation, not to the point of a warranty claim. It's never going to get there,
yeah.
but dang nearly there in, a year and a half. So the same type of scores that we were seeing on 6-year-old cars.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Okay. So definitely hard no.
for me,
Yeah.
there's if it's cheap enough, there's got to be a gap in the price. If
Right.
you can buy a 22 for the price of an 18, maybe. But I would even argue that 18, and this was going to be my hot take, and we'll get into that. Low mileage does not equal a better car. Um, and a
Interesting.
newer car doesn't necessarily equal a better car either. So
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. And then going back to like the $4,000 used EV tax credit, 20 like I'm not mistaken that 2023s are also now eligible for the
yeah,
used car.
yeah,
And
we've been doing
so,
a lot of 2023s.
but I feel like has the market adjusted to that? Like because it's so
The
early in the
Aria.
year.
Yeah, the Aria. That's how we got the 2023 Aria. That qualifies. So 25 grand minus four. The Bolts are down there. Kias are down there. So I mean, there's plenty of EVs that are 2023s that have gotten below 25 grand.
Yeah, that's tough. That's crazy. All right, so now we'll get into like the pro tip of the week. Chip, you want to go first? What's your pro tip of the week?
So, I just want to talk about some of the cars that I saw this week in the shop. And one of my pro tips is if you're buying a used car, get a pre-purchase inspection done. We've had some clients that came and visited me to look at vehicles. I didn't have the exact color or trim that they wanted. They were able to find it and they brought them back for pre-purchase inspections. And I'm always happy to look at a car. So I always encourage my clients, if you're looking at a vehicle, if you're not buying from, even if you're buying from a reputable dealer, to get a second opinion, get a Carfax, get an auto check, make sure that you're doing your due diligence, because there's one car that came to us actually had a bad Carfax and the dealer was only providing auto check. So the customer thought the car was accident free. And I pull up the Carfax and it's been hit in the front. And then we did a little bit deeper dive in and we found that there were some parts of the car that hadn't been repaired properly. So we saved them $250, saved them a ton of money from buying a bad Model S. This was a $40,000 car he was about to buy. So get a PPI done on a Tesla or any used car that you buy. It is definitely worth it.
Yeah, that's that's good. And well, I guess in Tennessee, of course, where you're at, like people can go to you, but like where do other people go if like in other states? Like I don't even know. Like if I was in California, do I just look up my local shop or that maybe specializes in electric vehicles? Because does like I don't even know if does Tesla do pre-purchase inspection?
Believe it or not, Tesla will do a pre-purchase inspection. You just have to wait for the regular appointment time, which could be 2 or 3 weeks, which isn't, you know, really possible,
Yeah.
because the car will sell in that time period, time you get the appointment. So you're gonna have to look up an independent shop. I think a lot more shops in California, you have plenty of options out there with EV specialty shops. Here in the Southeast, it may struggle a little bit, but there are definitely shops out there. The local Firestone, some of the branded dealers or brands are getting up to speed on EVs. I know Firestone is making a huge push, and NTB also, to be able to service tires and alignments and things like that on Tesla. We're actually making a big push to help convert shops to start taking on EVs and offering that. So we're putting together a service program so you can take your regular repair shop and start offering EV service. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's pretty
So
good. Do
there
you
should
got
be a lot more in the area. You just got to reach out and see who's doing it. But
do
anybody
you
can go ahead.
yeah, no. Do you have like, or do you sell like a checklist? Like, could someone go to your website or send you a message like, hey, I want to buy your checklist, the Chip Jeppy checklist for electric vehicles and Tesla vehicles that,
Never thought about it, but I'd give you my checklist, our inspection list for free. You know, we
yeah,
give it with every car that we sell, so you can see what we're looking at. We attach our Versa new battery report, the Carfax, everything to it. So yeah, I mean, you reach out to me, send me an email, I'll send you the copy back.
I love it. And so my pro tip is if you're paying cash, you should just buy used just because the depreciation on some of these Tesla vehicles can be so great at like 1 to 2 years out. And so if you're financing them, of course, take like the subsidized interest low 0% rate or whatever it is. But cash buyers should really take a look at used as like a comparison between the two because of how much depreciation some of these vehicles are. And even like the brand new one, it's just not worth it at this point. You should always look at used. And I think my sweet spot is like a year to two because then you still get like 2 to 3 years of warranty. And of course, or you could look at a warranty from our partner Amber that's a month-to-month warranty on your Tesla vehicle. But that's kind of like my threshold on if you're paying cash, you might as well just look at used. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you're looking for a 1 or 2 year old car, like the Model Y specifically, like you talked about, you can buy a 1.5 year old one for 33 grand right now. So you can save $20,000. I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely that's a good tip right there.
Yeah. But we always hear like these headlines that, Teslas, they're depreciating so much, like, or electric vehicles are. Would you say, because I always thought it was just they're just depreciating at the normal rate of a luxury vehicle. But I guess like the argument is that they're not luxury vehicles. But would you say it's more aggressive depreciation or it's just the same and these headlines are just blown out of proportion?
We worked together at a BMW store for 6 or 7 years. We
Yeah.
know what depreciation looks like, and the Teslas follow it just like a BMW, just like a Mercedes, just like an Audi. You're paying 100 grand for it one day, 3 years later, it's worth half. I think the Model 3 is very equivalent to a 3 Series or like a Mercedes C-Class as far as what you get. It may not have as nice of a build quality, but it does have other attributes that I think puts it in that class. And it follows the same depreciation schedule as those cars. You can buy a 2018 C-Class for about the same price you can buy a 2018 a Model 3 for. You can buy a 2-year-old C-Class or 3 Series for about the same price as you can buy a 2-year-old Model 3 for. So it's not out of line for me who's been, or for you who's been in luxury car sales our whole life. It just seems to be on par with everything else. Now, the people who are coming from Honda and Toyota and some of these other brands who are not used to these big depreciation drops, it can be shocking because you don't buy this car and you can sell it for basically what you paid for it, like the Honda Accord. That's like you're in an equity position in year 3 in most Hondas. You're
Yeah.
not in an equity position in year 3 on any luxury car. Tesla's no example. And I would put it in that category.
I see. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So in this next section, we usually take questions from you that are watching. If you had any sort of questions you want to ask either of us on the new or the used or service side, we'll definitely drop a link down below to a form so that you can send in a video or even ask us and write it out as a question. But thank you for making it to the end of our podcast. That we're now in the discharge where we talk about our hot takes or gripes with the current market or whatever it may be. I think I'll go first, and maybe, not to get political, but certainly my gripe right now is that the Teslas that are getting attacked or the Tesla superchargers are getting attacked, but really it's the owners' vehicles that are getting attacked. I really feel like, hey, like these people could have just bought the Tesla before, like they shouldn't be attacked for no reason. And the attacks are going kind of pretty crazy, like not, people riding on vehicles, people throwing up on vehicles. And so I really felt like the mindset with that, it just doesn't make any sort of sense. And I think that really needs to come to a stop. And I know that's going a little bit off base, but that was kind of my gripe with what's going on right now.
All right. Well, my hot take is, and I mentioned this earlier, is that low mileage does not equal a better car. And I'll die on that mountain. Extreme low mileage cars are some of the most problematic vehicles I've ever sold in my life. Cars need to be driven regularly with some sort of frequency. And with a low mileage car, say we got a 2020, it's a 5-year-old car, it's got 10,000 miles on it. Was that 10,000 miles consistently driven over those 5-year period, or was it all driven in one stint and then the car was parked for 4 years and you got rotted out dry rot all throughout the car? And that's the thing with the low mileage. You don't know how it was driven. And like I said, I find more problems with extreme low mileage cars. And I find that people are willing to pay a premium for it. And it's really unjustified on some of them. In your mind, if you're buying an extreme low mileage car, you expect the car to be perfect, cherry, garage kept, tire shine still on, knobby still on the tires. And in fact, most of them were just rotted out, sitting. We're not talking Porsches or Lamborghinis or anything. We're talking everyday cars, that need to be driven. So that's my hot take, that low mileage does not necessarily mean a better car. And in fact, in some cases, I think it means a worse car. That one that's been driven an average of like 10,000 miles per year.
And I guess it depends on the owner too. Like if it was a one owner vehicle that was driven a ton of miles, but you've got service history, like of everything, then that could be a good case versus
But that's
one.
the exception to the rule
Oh, I
versus
see.
I would say if you have 10 cars and they're all really low mileage for the years, I think one of them is going to be that cherry car that you're thinking of. The other
Mhm.
9 are going to be really old people let it rot in their garage, and they got it buffed. And that's what I find most of. So that's my hot take.
I love it. Well, thank you all for watching. Definitely leave any sort of feedback in the comments down below. On our next episode, we're going to talk about the hidden cost of electric vehicle ownership that no one really talks about, and really dive into like how much are you actually going to be paying if you buy new or more specifically a used vehicle. But thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.